The sun had become an enemy, beating down on them as they floated aimlessly. 8 days, 8 long days without food, water, or solid ground beneath their feet. Constantly bailing water out of their battered and breaking boat. Their mouths felt like they were filled with sand, their heads pounded with thirst and hunger. The rainwater they had collected in old tins found on board was gone. They could feel every ache in their bodies. The dehydration made their muscles scream, every breath shallow and dry. Their small wooden vessel was taking on water at an alarming rate, and it would surely sink at any moment. All hope was almost lost. Then someone gasped. "There," they shouted, pointing with trembling hands. The others forced their eyes open against the glare of the morning sun. They saw it too, faint at first, like a mirage on the horizon. Land, solid, unmoving, and real. An island, one which was unknown to any of them. The sight lit something within them. Energy they didn't know they had came rushing back, the details of the island sharpening before them. Jagged cliffs, rising like guardians, green foliage promising shade and life. It appeared rocky, forbidden, and unwelcoming, but also like a miracle. The boat groaned under their weight, reminding them that it was moments from breaking apart. Without a way to steer, they decided they would swim for it. This was their last chance. With the aid of planks, they swam all day and halfway into the next night, finally washing up on a rocky ledge in the darkness. Beyond wrecked and exhausted, they lay there for a while until their need for sustenance overpowered their exhaustion. On the nearby cliff edges, they spotted seabirds, and they took their eggs and swallowed them down. Still, without fresh water, they killed the birds and drank their blood, gulping desperately. It might as well have been gold. It stung their dry throats but filled them with life and a sliver of hope. They said a prayer, thanking God for bringing them there and the sea for sparing them. After that, they all fell down and slept until sunrise the next morning, waking in a forgotten land, not yet knowing it would be more than 15 months until they saw another soul. This is the story of the 6 Tongan Castaways. Welcome to Wild Curiosity. Today, we are taking an adventure a little ways back in time to 1965 in the remote South Pacific alongside the Tongan Castaways. This is a true story often referred to as a real-life Lord of the Flies. But unlike the fictional tale of descent into chaos, this is an incredible true story of hope and resilience. 6 young boys, aged 13 to 19, stranded on a remote island for over a year, no transportation, no tools, no way to communicate with the outside world, and at times, no hope. And yet, against all odds, they turned a nightmare into a story of survival and unity. It's a story so incredible, it's honestly hard to believe. Let's get our bearings really quick and talk about the Tongan Islands. So, Tonga is an island country in Polynesia. The country has over 171 islands, of which 45 are inhabited. Formed by volcanic activity along a subduction zone, the islands rise dramatically from the ocean floor, revealing rugged cliffs and lush vegetation. The first inhabitants of Tonga arrived around 3,000 years ago, part of the Great Polynesian Migration. Over centuries, Tongans developed a sophisticated society rooted in community and seafaring traditions. Families passed down vital skills like fishing, farming, and navigation through the generations. Our story begins in June 1965 on the main island of Tongatapu in Nuku'alofa, the bustling capital of Tonga. It's here, at a strict boarding school, where we find our 6 teenage friends: Sione, Stephen, Kolo, David, Mano, and Luke. The boarding school they attended was known for its rigorous discipline and religious instruction. Founded by Anglican missionaries, it aimed to prepare boys for leadership roles in Tonga's modernizing society. However, the school's strict environment felt stifling to many students. Classes were rigid, chores were mandatory, and punishments were harsh. For boys raised in the relative freedom of Tongan village life, this environment felt oppressive. The boys dreamt of adventure offshore while they sat restless and yearning for freedom. When you're young, I think we all have those moments where there's a certain pull and a desire to run away. I know I wanted to run away, to escape the familiar and chase something more grand. Living on a small island can amplify that intrusive feeling of island fever. This yearning is what led these six boys to take a reckless gamble. Late one night, fueled by their own shared dissatisfaction, they quote unquote borrowed a 24-foot wooden fishing boat. One of the boys knew how to operate it thanks to the time he spent on his father's boat, which was almost identical. Their destination? Perhaps Fiji, or even New Zealand. Anywhere but Tonga. But as they soon would find out, they wouldn't be returning to their boring school or safe life on the Big Island. But they weren't getting any kind of vacation either, because fate had other plans. Just days into their journey, the vast Pacific turned against them. A ferocious storm struck, and the wind whipped viciously around the small boat. In their inexperience, the boys didn't think to lower the sail in time, which caused the entire mast to suddenly snap in two, leaving them adrift. Their sail gone, the rudder broken, and their anchor detached and lost to the storm, they had no way to steer and no provisions to survive. For the next 8 days, they clung to life, until finally, on that eighth day, the ocean revealed that faded glimmer of hope, an uninhabited island called Atta, which lies around 100 miles south-southwest of Tongatapu. The morning after they landed on Atta's shore, the boys woke and tried to come up with a plan and system to survive. Their situation was bleak. They had no food, their ship was wrecked, and no one knew where they had gone. They would soon find out that the only native fauna to Atta was a species of rat. It proved ridiculously hard to hunt, and when they did capture them, they barely provided any meat. So during the first 3 months, they relied mostly on seabirds and their eggs near the shore. They still had no fresh water, and even though they continued drinking bird blood, survival seemed very unlikely. But hope was just around the corner. Most of Atta's land is a high plateau, reaching 200 to 330 feet above sea level, with steep cliffs and rocky beaches ringing the shoreline of the entire island. There are 3 minor peaks, 2 on the west side of the island and 1 on the east side. They range in elevation from 590 to 1,000 feet. It has a total land area of approximately 0.58 square miles. Although it was apparently formed by volcanic action, no record of volcanic activity exists, but there is like a crater and stuff. A century before the boys arrived, Atta was home to a village called Colomel, which at its peak had about 350 people living there. In 1862, the village of Colomel was visited by Peruvian merchants. Deciding that slave trading was more profitable than whaling, they invited the islanders on board for trading. Once almost half of the population was on board, doors and rooms were locked, and the ship sailed away. 144 people never returned. When the king of Tonga heard of the Peruvian efforts, he evacuated the remaining people on Atta. In their haste, they left behind all of their tools and, more importantly, the chickens they had brought to the island. The 6 marooned teenagers didn't know this history, but they had a good sense to trek upwards to explore more of the island. When they ultimately decided to summit the volcanic crater from which Atta was formed, they found the ruins of Colomel. including crudely made knives and their feral chickens. This new discovery meant the boys, now able to hunt the chickens, cut root vegetables, and slice open coconuts, could survive on Atta indefinitely. And they believed they'd have to. They started planting beans, taming the chickens for breeding, and even setting up a net with makeshift tennis rackets so they could get additional exercise. Despite their still weakened state, they attempted daily for 3 months to create fire using traditional methods. All the meat they had consumed up until this point had been raw. Finally, they succeeded in igniting a flame. The initial ember was birthed using sea hibiscus for fire plow. This is an age old technique passed down through generations. But what's even more remarkable is their tenacity in maintaining this fire. It became their beacon of hope and glowed continuously throughout their 15-month stay. They understood its importance, not only for warmth and cooking, but as a signal should any rescue party be nearby. Dude, they kept that fire going for 12 months. So that was like, a full-time job just in itself. In an environment where fresh water was a luxury, the boys innovated. They meticulously captured rainwater, storing it in hollowed out tree trunks. These natural reservoirs ensured they had a relatively steady supply of water, safeguarding them from dehydration. With new determination to survive, the boys quickly organized themselves. They divided responsibilities: tending to the fire, collecting fresh water, fishing, and foraging. They also built a shelter using palm fronds and wood, creating a safe haven from the elements. They even managed to keep banana plants alive, ensuring a small but consistent food supply. Escaping the island was never far from their minds. They made their best attempt at building a raft with a rough cabin on top and stocked what food they could carry and set off with high hopes of home. Sadly, only about a mile from shore, the raft broke up, and they were forced to swim back to their deserted island and to resume life as they knew it. Even though the group was faring pretty well under the circumstances, survival wasn't always easy. One of the boys broke his leg while exploring the cliffside for more seabird nests. Without medical supplies, the group crafted makeshift splints and tended to him until he fully recovered. Despite their dire situation, the group managed to maintain their humanity, structure, and sense of civilization that transcended mere survival. They not only developed ingenious ways to sustain themselves physically, but also nurtured their mental and emotional well being. So here's some of the techniques they applied: dividing labor. Understanding the importance of teamwork and order, the boys divided labor among themselves, ensuring that everyone had a role. Pairing up for tasks like gardening, kitchen duties, and guard duty, fostering a sense of responsibility, and this kept them engaged. They supported each other emotionally, sharing the burden of despair and loneliness, and maintaining a sense of hopefulness. They would pray together, sing songs, and create their rituals, fostering a sense of camaraderie and connection that sustained them through their ordeal. They also had respect for life. Remarkably, the boys even held funerals for birds they killed for food. Oh, so sweet. These rituals symbolized their continued respect for life, even in their desperate situation. They did not lose sight of their empathy and compassion, recognizing the value of every living thing. They also tried to create a sense of home by reviving remnants of the ancient village of Colomel. They recreated a semblance of home in their inhospitable environment. They revived cultural practices and adapted them to their new circumstances, keeping their cultural heritage alive. One of their favorite things they made was a small ukulele like instrument using two halves of coconuts as sound boxes and wire salvaged from the planks they brought ashore, using those as strings. This gave them incentive to compose 5 songs. Their evenings were spent in the traditional Tongan style. I did see this video on YouTube of one of the Tongan castaways, and he goes back to the island with a blogger, YouTube guy, and stays for 10 days, and he shows him how they survived. But he also still remembers the words to the song, one of the songs, and plays it with that, like, old school handmade ukulele, and then later it has him playing it on guitar at home, and it's super beautiful, and so I'm gonna try to play some clips of that. I'm gonna post it on Instagram, so check it out because it's so sweet. It has the subtitles at the bottom, the translation, and the words are so sad, like, you can really hear just how lonely and desperate and how much they wanted to go home, and it's kinda heartbreaking, but also really cool they did that to get themselves through. Even when disputes arose, the boys would take time to cool off at separate ends of the beach and then return to discuss the issue calmly. They had a shared goal, and they knew that working together was their only hope of survival. Despite the trials they faced, they never lost hope. They believed in the possibility of rescue and worked hard to keep themselves ready for that moment. Their belief in themselves and each other kept them alive in spirit as well as body. In a situation that could have brought out the worst in human nature, the story of the Tongan Castaways is a remarkable tale. The boys didn't just survive, they thrived, keeping their humanity intact. In September 1966, after 15 months of survival on the uninhabited island of Atta, the six Tongan boys' lives took a dramatic turn. Peter Warner, an Australian sea captain and adventurer, and the son of a wealthy businessman, was navigating the waters near Atta during a lobster fishing expedition. Warner had a history of adventurous pursuits, having previously defied his father's wishes by pursuing a life at sea instead of joining the family business. As Warner's vessel approached Atta, he noticed unusual signs: patches of burned vegetation on the cliffs. Given that Atta had been uninhabited since the 1860s, these signs piqued his curiosity. Some might call it wild curiosity. Deciding to investigate, Warner and his crew anchored near the island. To their astonishment, they were greeted by a group of boys who, upon seeing the boat, swam out to meet them. The boys, now lean, weathered from their prolonged ordeal, and very naked, introduced themselves in English, explaining that they were students from a boarding school in Nuku'alofa and they had been stranded on the island for over a year. Initially skeptical, Warner contacted Nuku'alofa via radio to verify their story. The response was one of shock and joy. Boys had been presumed dead, and their families had long ago mourned their loss and had funerals for them. Warner's astonishment at finding the boys in such good health was matched only by the boys' excitement at being rescued. What was initially a routine exploration turned into a rescue mission, as Warner and his crew took the young men and sailed back to Tonga. Upon finally returning to civilization, the boys were long thought dead and were welcomed as heroes. The news of their survival spread across the world, turning them and Warner into international sensations. The connection between Warner and the boys ran deep, and he went on to play a significant role in their lives, highlighting the extraordinary bond forged through this unique discovery. Warner took the boys aboard his vessel, providing them with food, clothing, and medical attention. He noted their remarkable health and their strong bond they shared. Upon their return to Tonga, the boys were met with overwhelming emotion. The entire community turned out to welcome them, celebrating their miraculous survival. However, their return also brought legal challenges. The owner of the stolen 24-foot fishing boat demanded compensation for his lost property. At first, they were actually incarcerated and thrown in jail, but demonstrating his compassion further and sense of justice, Peter Warner agreed to cover the cost of the boat, ensuring the boys' freedom and absolving them from any legal repercussions. Can you imagine, like, getting off a friggin' island and then been, like, on a deserted island for 15 months, and then some, like, grouchy old man, like, is still pissed about his boat, so then you go to jail, and then you're behind bars, like, what would be better? I don't know. Probably the island. The bond between Warner and the boys endured beyond their rescue. He employed several of them on his fishing boats, and their shared experiences led to a lifelong friendship. Warner's role in their rescue and his subsequent relationship with the boys became a defining chapter in his life. The extraordinary rescue not only reunited the boys with their families, but also highlighted the profound impact of human kindness and the enduring spirit of adventure. Well, okay, my curious friends. Thank you so much for joining me today. I just wanted to ask you to please support the podcast, follow me on Instagram, email me at wildcuriositypodcast@gmail.com. You can also message me on Instagram. What makes you curious? Is there anything you want to deep dive into? I am open to pretty much all things. And doing the survival story was really cool, especially because it turned out so good. But yeah, I'm down for the ones that aren't so good either. I saw some other ones while I was researching this. So, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I hope you have the best day. And yeah, just remember any day you're not stranded on a desert island, you're lucky. I'll see you guys Thursday after next for our next episode. Happy Thanksgiving. Thankful for all of you that take your time to listen. It means a lot to me. And as always, remember to stay curious and explore the wilds. Bye, guys. Love ya.